I have some good news. And the good news is that our Latina community is resilient AF. We are so resilient. So there is actually research that occurs at Stanford. It's called the Soul Summit. So every year they have something called the Soul Summit, which is State of Latino Entrepreneurship. And they run hard numbers to look at Latino-owned businesses and what their foundings found back in March, because I attended their conference in March, is that Latinos and Latinas are resilient AF. So even though we are under attack, we're also so freaking resilient. Our community builds anyway. So a decade of Stanford research shows that Latino-owned businesses grew 44% from 2018 to 2023, reaching 465,202 firms. So businesses. And this growth fuels jobs, innovations, despite funding gaps. So we're less likely to receive funding, yet our businesses are growing at a faster rate. Welcome to the Chingona Revolution podcast, where we will bring out your inner badass Latina, overcome self-doubt, help you gain clarity, and pave your own path, all while leading with courage. I am your host, Latina coach and speaker, Erica Cruz. If you've been pissed with the videos around social media with both the raids that are occurring in Chicago or in Los Angeles, I want you to know you're not alone. And this episode is for you. This is the third time I've tried to record this podcast episode. And the truth is that there's no right or wrong way of talking about this. The truth is that our community is experiencing a lot of heaviness based on the attacks that are going on when it comes to immigration. And when this administration was talking about immigration, it was very much framed from this perspective that it was going to be to get criminals out of the United States, which I think we can all agree we don't want criminals here, whether they're immigrants or not, right? Nobody wants criminals in their neighborhood. We can all agree with that. But I think those of us from the Latino community knew that that was complete bullshit. We knew that that is what was that was the narrative to give them permission to racially profile against our community. And we're seeing that happening now throughout Los Angeles, throughout Chicago. So 71% of people in ICE detention have no criminal conviction. So let that one land. Hello, friends. Welcome back to this week's episode of Chingona Revolution podcast. This is your host, Erica Cruz. And today I want to talk about this very heavy attack on our community and how this is harnessing a lot of fear, but how we can convert that into power and into conviction and inform us. If you are getting triggered and upset by these videos, or maybe you've seen it in person if you're located in Chicago or in Los Angeles. I know when I was driving to Los Angeles to see my brother not too long ago, it was not even a month ago, and there were so many National Guard vehicles on the highway. And I was like, they make it seem like our community is so dangerous, when in reality, our community are the street vendors and the people picking our fruit and also contributing to society, not just from an economic perspective, but also culturally. I mean, what do you think these people are doing who want immigrants out of here on Tuesdays? They're going to Taco Tuesday. I mean, who are the people who consume the most for Cinco de Drinko? It's not the Latinos, it's the white people. And I want to be very clear, there's a lot of amazing white allies, not because of their skin color does that have to do with, their views. I have a diverse group of friends, and a lot of them are allies. So wanted to make that clear. So let's talk about what's happening now and how it's showing up in our daily life and how it's affecting our community. Let's also talk about why fear can echo across generations, but also how we are a very resilient community and how we can do something about this in a nonviolent way, how we can allow this anger to be our fuel to do something very productive, as well as how joy is something that is your natural birthright. And during a time when it feels heavy to celebrate, how it's still our birthright to find joy. And I think about this a lot because I have days when I feel really positive and great. And then I have days when I'm looking at these videos and I feel really horrible. And I'm like, damn, I can't even, I feel guilty for enjoying my life. And I think a lot of you can feel the same way. I've been hearing this from clients over and over. Even just showing up for my business has been difficult. But the truth is that if I don't show up for my business, I don't make money. If I don't make money, I don't have money for my mortgage, for my food, for survival, right? And it's like everyone else is still going to work, sad, but still going to work. And I still have to show up for work. So I have had to really sit with, this is why I created a purpose-driven business. Because when I show up for my business and my clients get result, guess what? When they get results, our community elevates. Our community identifies what needs to happen to elevate our community. So by me showing up for my business, it's actually supporting our community. And before getting into this episode, I would like to mention that I have a good amount of privilege. I am a born US citizen. Both of my parents are now citizens, even though they were immigrants. And I mean, I have things like global entry, so I could easily flow in and out of the country and travel, and I get to travel a good amount. So I'm aware of my privilege, and I'm aware of the privilege of even recording this podcast episode, right? If I was undocumented, I probably would not be outspoken. I would probably feel the need to hide. So if you yourself are undocumented, or if somebody in your family is and you don't feel safe speaking out, do what you need to do to feel safe. But for those of us that do have privilege, I think this is our call forward. This is our call in which, if you've always wanted to give back, this is our time to give back. And hopefully this podcast episode will give you some inspiration with how it is that you can give back. And, a lot of times it's really showing up for our full purpose and showing up for our full potential and speaking up even when we feel a little bit of doubt. And I'm not telling you have to go be this activist and like go out on the streets and protest. If that's your calling, please go do that. But if that's not what you're comfortable with, maybe your way of supporting the community is through art. Maybe it's through writing. Maybe it's through another form. And we'll talk about that a little bit today, how Bad Bunny has been able to really elevate the community through nonviolence and through his art. So with that being said, let's get into it. So what is it that's happening right now? Obviously, if you're located in one of the cities of Los Angeles or Chicago, then you have seen it firsthand, what is happening with ICE raids, how they've been using tear gas and pepper balls on crowds and multiple arrests and just some aggression, and how this is affecting the way that our community is showing up. Because if you have a family member that is undocumented, or you yourself are undocumented, what do you want to do? You want to be invisible. You don't want to be seen. Maybe you don't even feel comfortable going out to get groceries. Maybe you are skipping your doctor's appointments. Maybe you're sick and you're not calling. Or if there's a domestic violence case, maybe they're not calling law enforcement for fear of being deported. They stay off of social media. They literally are taught to hide, not taught, right? But like this fear is making them want to be invisible. And again, our data shows, the data that has been shared with us shows that 71% of people held in ICE detention have no criminal convictions, which heightens the sense that anybody in our circle could be next. And I think we've seen these videos of the Los Angeles street vendors be just like cars that aren't even labeled as ICE or as part of the government are literally pulling up and just trying to attack these street vendors that are just trying to make a living, who pay a good amount of taxes, and guess what? Do not reap the benefits of those taxes that they pay. They're literally paying into US citizens having the benefits they have, because undocumented individuals actually do not have access to healthcare. They actually do not have access to Social Security, to all of the other benefits that documented folks do have. So fear isn't just a feeling, it's literally a survival response. And if we don't name it, it runs our calendar and our dream, right? It like really makes us invisible. So I want to talk about this fear. And if you've read the book, It Didn't Start With You, then you already know this. But if you didn't read it, this book is all about generational trauma and how sometimes the trauma that we experience actually didn't even start with us. But it talks about how trauma can echo across 3 generations. So they actually did this experiment on mice because mice reproduce a lot faster than us. So they had 3 generations of mice, and this grandparent was, I believe it was lavender. Lavender was the scent that they gave the rat or the mouse, whatever. We're just going to call them rats. So this grandparent was not allowed. The grandparent was exposed to the scent of lavender, and then whenever they smelled lavender, they would get a shock. And they trained the rat to associate, okay, lavender, shock, lavender, shock, lavender, shock. So then their children inherited that trauma response, which was for survival. Oh, wait, lavender means a shock. That's scary. So the child of the grandparent, anytime they smelled lavender, they reacted in the same way as the grandparents, even though there was no shock. And then that generation then had babies. So the grandchildren of that original rat that was exposed to the shock and the lavender, and even the grandchildren were afraid of the scent of lavender. It literally created a physical and chemical response of fear when they smelled that. So let's just think about that, right? Like people that were part of the Holocaust that maybe their grandparents were, they're still seeing effects of that trauma. So what's happening right now to our community of this fear of, oh my gosh, I don't want to be seen. Of course, that's going to affect not only this generation, but 3 generations to come. And that's why it's important for us to name this and to do what we can, especially if you have privilege, to speak up against this, to do whatever it is in whatever your calling is, right? Whatever your purpose is, do what you can. But the first step is awareness and knowing that generational trauma isn't just like, the reason it's called generational trauma is because it didn't have to happen to you. It could have happened to your grandparent and it could still affect you. So if we really think about what's happening now, it's allowing our community to feel more comfortable being invisible. Attacks on immigration aren't just going on now. It's been happening since I remember in the 90s when I was like super young, that, oh my gosh, la migra, like we would always hear that. And if that has been happening for generations, let's just look at you and I, how this could be affecting us. Maybe you are a US citizen, right? But this is still hitting really heavy for you. If you've ever wanted to post content on social media, but you're afraid of being seen, well, where do you think that stemmed from? Or if you are afraid of speaking up in a meeting, where do you think that stemmed from? If our community has constantly been conditioned to be invisible, if you have a hard time being seen, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So even though this administration and what is currently attacks on our community are currently happening, I have some good news. And the good news is that our Latina community is resilient AF. We are so resilient. So there is actually research that occurs at Stanford. It's called the Soul Summit. So every year they have something called the Soul Summit, which is State of Latino Entrepreneurship. And they run hard numbers to look at Latino-owned businesses and what their foundings found back in March, because I attended their conference in March, is that Latinos and Latinas are resilient AF. So even though we are under attack, we're also so freaking resilient. Our community builds anyway. So a decade of Stanford research shows that Latino-owned businesses grew 44% from 2018 to 2023, reaching 465,202 firms. So businesses. And this growth fuels jobs, innovations, despite funding gaps. So we're less likely to receive funding, yet our businesses are growing at a faster rate. And this research also showed that either immigrants or children of immigrants do much better in entrepreneurship because of our ability to face obstacles and deal with change, which is such a necessity as a business owner. So the translation is that resilience isn't a vibe. It's literally measurable. So the thing is that Latinos, we adapt, and we actually lead. So even though all of this fear is going on, even though all of this is going on, know that we are resilient. We really, really are. And we've seen it over and over. This isn't the first time this has happened to our community. I also want to take a look at how an artist like Bad Bunny has been able to take non-violent power in action, and how his 2025 residency ran a record-setting San Juan residency of No Me Quiero Ir de Aquí, which I had the honor of going to. It was amazing. It was so fun. And he intentionally skipped the United States mainland after saying that he feared that ICE could target venues and fans. And that in itself was a cultural stance through art, not violence, right? So remember at the beginning, I was saying maybe your thing is writing poetry. Maybe it is creating art. Maybe I want you to think bigger. Yes, we can go to protest. And if that's in alignment with you, please go ahead and do that. But also think about what it is that you're being called to do, because your curiosity is your compass. If you have this curiosity or this pull towards something, it's there for a reason. It's not there for no reason. So Bad Bunny's a great example of an artist that's using his creativity, and even in his songs, his song Turista from the latest album, as well as the Hawaii song, right? Like, I don't want what happened to Hawaii to also happen to Puerto Rico. There's a lot of, it's art, but he's also giving voice to Puerto Rico, giving voice to Latinos. And this residency of his also operated like an economic engine for Puerto Rico, which historically has not gotten the financial support from the mainland. Yet it's been raped for, and I say raped not in the literal sense, right? But business owners like Coca-Cola are based out of Puerto Rico because they get all these tax benefits, and it's like they've essentially conquered the island, but not given the island the resources necessary for it to thrive. So by Bad Bunny making his residency there, he really acted like this economic engine and generated over $200 million for the island, with some outlets citing maybe 300 to 380 million when they really considered like the broader tourism and the spends, as well as the tens of thousands of hotel nights and the rise for local businesses and whatnot. So while you do not need a stadium like Bad Bunny did to move culture, you do have your story, your offer, your circle, your creativity. So leverage that. Remember that you get to make a difference by living to your full potential. In moments like these, it can be so easy to be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to show up. Just like I was talking about at the beginning of this episode, and how I felt bad promoting my business and talking to my community when all of these different things were going on. And I remember I was actually in Italy whenever all the ICE raids started in Los Angeles. And I was journaling about this while I was sitting at the beach. And I was like, how can I do this? And I just felt very connected to Mother Nature because I'm sitting at the beach. And I was like, how can I be the most authentic in this moment? And what I came to was, I get to run my business in the way that I want. And I said, what if I donate a percentage of my enrollment to support an immigrant nonprofit? And I ended up finding this nonprofit called the Young Center for Immigrant Children's Rights. So they support children who've been separated by their family. They just help children that have been separated through everything going on with immigration. So whether these children have to represent themselves in court, whether they maybe have been traveling on their own to the United States, because there's also a lot of minors who make the journey on their own. And this organization specifically supports them. So I was like, okay, I want to donate money to this organization. And I did. And we ended up donating almost $1,500 from the last enrollment of Courage Driven Latina. And then guess what? This organization called me directly and they thanked me so much for the donation. We've now been in contact. Now there's possibilities of like maybe working together, and so many beautiful things can happen whenever you open your mind and don't allow yourself to play small. So if you are wondering like, okay, how is it that I can do something right now? First, I want you to know your fear is very valid, but use your fear like fuel. How can you convert that fear to strategy? Maybe you get to just share things on your social media about know your rights. So, right, maybe you can do like Spanish printable cards where you do the know your rights, and you maybe teach your household a simple script in case somebody knocks at the door. Or maybe you offer to go to your local church, right? And talk to people there. Or maybe you can do some volunteer work with a nonprofit. Or maybe you can talk to the company that you work for about doing an information session about what's going on. I mean, there's so many things you can do. If you love poetry, write poetry, share it with the world. If you love painting, paint, share that with the world. It doesn't have to be super public. It doesn't have to be like for me, where I donated 10% of my sales. You get to do it in whatever way feels authentic for you. Even doing like a prayer, right? Prayer for people that you don't know, or that have been separated from their family, or maybe people who are living in fear. Or if you know somebody who's undocumented and they're afraid of going to the grocery store, can you go get groceries for them? There's so much that we can do when we get ourselves out of survival mode. But whenever we are seeing these videos and we just get so enraged, it's like our immediate reaction is to be back in survival mode. And that's exactly what they want of us. So how can you honor a space for being upset, but maybe take time in your journal, reflect on what it is that you want to do. Maybe you meditate on it. Maybe you talk to people that you care about. You hold space for one another, but we don't allow ourselves to let the fear be what holds us back, especially if we have privilege. This is really a call for you to step into your complete purpose right now. If you've wanted to do something, but you've been afraid of like, oh my gosh, what if I fail? What if people think I'm not qualified to do this? This is your wake-up call, where your purpose gets to be what propels the community forward. I always think about with Hurricane Katrina and how Beyonce did more for Hurricane Katrina than the US government did. And when we allow ourselves to be the most abundant version of ourselves, the most successful version of ourselves, everybody benefits. Everybody benefits. And this is exactly what this administration doesn't want. So as you think about what you can do, if you are a creator or a professional, can you maybe post one story this week with what you do, who it helps, how to hire or book you? Because remember that this visibility also funds our community stability. Or like I mentioned earlier, maybe you can volunteer at places like the ACLU or your local nonprofit. Or maybe you even just find out, hey, what are the nonprofits? What resources are available? So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to include some resources down below in the show notes. But the whole purpose of this podcast episode is to validate your anger, validate your fear, but also remind you that you hold a lot of power. And they would not be coming after our community if they didn't know how powerful we are. There is no better time to be Latina. There is no better time to be Latino. What we do now in response to what's happening to our community dictates where our community goes. So may we take inspiration from Bad Bunny, who used his art and creativity for political movement, for economic impact, and embody that in whatever way it makes sense to us. And if you yourself are undocumented, we see you. We are here for you. We are fighting for you. Reach out to somebody that you trust, and don't force yourself to do anything that feels outside of your comfort zone. And for those of us who are the allies, may we show up for them. Okay, friends, thank you so much for joining me. This was definitely one of those episodes that wasn't very planned. It was more something I felt the need to speak about. I am hosting a webinar all about how to make 2026 your main character year, which actually is very fitting, right? Because what they want to do is silence us, make us invisible. And this webinar it's a free training all about how to show up for yourself, how to make yourself the main character of your life, because when you do that, you get to support other people as well. So we'll link that down below. And as well as all of the resources, including the Know Your Rights, ACLU, like even in Spanish as well, the Know Your Rights card, as well as a printable red card, which is just kind of knowing like what the scripts you can use for your home and work encounters. I'm also going to include detention data as well as the Bad Bunny residency impact, because there's been some articles written on that. So I'm going to include all of that down below. If this podcast episode resonated with you, let me know. I love to hear from you. Share this with a friend, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Make sure to visit theericacruz.com. That's Erica with a K, where you can subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. You can help this podcast grow by supporting me with an Apple Podcast rate and review. If you took anything away from this episode, I invite you to take a screenshot and share it on social media so that your favorite badass Latinas can also check it out. Be sure to tag me at the Erica Cruz, that's Erica with a K, because you know I want to see it. If you're ready to join the revolution and be a part of the Courage Driven Latina community, visit couragedrivenlatina.com to get more information and join the waitlist. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.